Hi, I'm Chef Jeff, and welcome to my classroom. I'm excited you're here. My goal is to help you win at life and win at cooking, step by step. So you'll find out that my videos, they're not flashy, they're not fancy, but what my videos will do is help you learn the fundamentals of cooking, the fundamentals of faith, and how to build a successful life. Because my goal is to help you win at cooking and win at life, step by step. I'm glad you're here. Let's get cooking together. Today, we're cooking French crepes, which are a fantastic little French pancake. They're thin, they're beautiful. But before we start cooking, what I want to talk to you about first is what can you learn from cooking and life at the same time? Because when I'm cooking, that's how I think about things. I don't think about necessarily the food or the equipment. I think about like, what can I learn about life and life principles along the way. And so today, what's really important is that we learn from French crepes how to pay attention to the details. Because the details in life matter, and they matter in your everyday life, and they matter in cooking. And so we're going to put those two things together. So let's get cooking. Are y'all ready to learn making French crepes? I am. So let's get started. So we're starting off with a little bit of butter. And so we're gonna melt some butter in here. And then we're going to start off by getting our eggs ready. So anytime I'm cooking and I'm cracking an egg, I like to crack an egg on a flat surface, whether it's the table or the bowl. And so here I'm going to crack my eggs right here on the inside of the bowl, and then you're guaranteed not to lose it all over the table. So anytime you crack an egg on the side, 50% of the time it's going to end up on the table and in the bowl. Then you lose a bunch of stuff. So today we're taking our eggs, crack them right inside, and then we need to break all the proteins up so that this will come out really nice and smooth. So French crepes, the beauty about them is the small details, right? The small details help you be successful at your life. And so small details are an everyday thing, and crepes could be an everyday thing too if you want. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to whisk, and we're going to break the eggs up. But we don't want to just whisk them for a few seconds. We're going to whisk them until all of the proteins, all the little white proteins, whisk it until all the proteins are broken apart. And so you really have to whisk it and whisk it good. So once your eggs are whisked and nice and smooth, then we're going to add just a splash of your milk to them. Mix that together with a little bit of sugar, a pinch of salt. So I'm going to add a little bit of flour to it, and then we're going to do what's called the wet-dry method. So right here where the wet, the dry, and the bowl, where they come together is where we're going to start mixing. And we're going to get just a little bit of flour at a time, mixing this together. The goal is to not get a bunch of lumps in it. And so if you add all your flour too quick, then you get a bunch of lumps. Now I use this method, the wet-dry method, for making pancake batter, for starting breads, for anything where there's flour, basically something dry and wet like flour and eggs being mixed together. And it works really, really well. And so I'm just slowly kind of eating away at the flour that's in the bowl. And this is only our first addition of flour. So we're going to mix the first round of flour in, get as many of the lumps out as we can, and then we're going to put the rest of the flour in. And continue the wet-dry method. Now, when we add the rest of this flour, it's going to get a little pasty, and that's good, because the pasty part, and where it's really thick, is what helps you work all the lumps out. So if you do get lumps, as long as you keep the flour like close together, then you can whisk all the lumps out. But if you added all this milk right now to the bowl, it'll spread that flour out, and then the lumps will happen here and here and all these different places, and it'd be really hard for your whisk to get in there and break them all up. So the goal is keep the flours close together so that you can mix everything up nice and smooth. And that's what we're doing here. Now, if you haven't got your workout for the day, this will be a good shoulder and arm workout for you, right? So now we have this thick paste, and I'm going to make sure I don't have lumps at this point. And so this is a really important stage. Again, taking attention to the details as you're cooking, that all of the lumps are gone at this point. And now I'm going to add my milk. And I'm going to add it in probably 2 or 3 additions. So this first little bit of milk, I'm going to mix it in and make sure it's nice and smooth. Yeah, that's pretty. Look at that. Okay. Once I make sure it's nice and smooth and there's no lumps in it, I'm going to add a little bit more milk. So there's actually a process that's called tempering that's going on right now. Tempering is where you slowly bring 2 things together, and we do that for 2 reasons. Reason number 1 is for different textures, whether something is thin and something is thick, right? Something is runny and something is like a paste. The second reason is for temperature. Sometimes something is hot and something is cold. You want to bring them together. And sometimes it's both. So on this one, it's really only a texture issue today because the milk is cold, the flour is room temperature. There's not a really huge difference in them. But that's why we temper, for those 2 reasons. And so now I'm going to add all of my milk. And at this stage, this is where, if you're making the batter ahead of time, you would stop. Okay? So your crepe batter is here. You wouldn't add anything else to it, because really the last ingredient is butter. And so the butter, even if you get a little browning on the butter, oh, that's so nice. Okay, it smells wonderful. I don't mind a little bit of brown butter. That smell is fantastic. But the butter, if you put the butter in right now and you put it in the fridge, the butter is going to turn back to hard, and then you'll have a really thick batter that'd be hard to work with. And so if you're making your crepes ahead of time, you just take this batter at the stage it's in, put it in the fridge, and then when you're ready to use it, then you add your butter. Okay? And so this batter is ready. And so this is a great time to take a short break, and then we're going to come back and we'll start the crepes again. Now it's time to add your butter, and we're going to start making your crepes. So Rob and Kristen, if you're watching, pay attention. We're going to add just a little bit, about 2 to 3 ounces of butter to our crepe batter, and stir that in. And then I like to put it in some sort of taller container. I don't like to work out of a bowl for this part because a bowl can get really messy. So I'm going to get all my crepe batter out of there. And then set that aside, because part of cleaning, or part of cooking, the details is staying clean. So here we go. Crepes. The best way to make crepes is using a carbon steel pan. There are special crepe pans, but I like to use a Lodge carbon steel pan. I'm a big fan of Lodge cast iron and carbon steel pans. We use them all the time in cooking, and so we use these. This is a really great general purpose pan. I use it for almost everyday cooking. And so right now I'm going to start to get my pan hot. And what's really cool about cast iron is when you heat the pan will tell you when it's hot, right? It'll show you when it's hot. So what I'm looking for now is just a little puff of smoke. Okay, when I see a little puff of smoke, that means that the pan is hot through, because the pan itself is seasoned with oil. And so when the oil reaches what we call the smoke point, the point at which the oil will start to burn, then it'll leave off that little bit of smoke, and it says, hey, the pan is ready. And so I'm going to go through and show you all the things I have to make this happen. So I've got an extra bowl, and this bowl is to pour out any excess oil or sometimes batter if it doesn't fit what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to put that to the side. Then I like to have a ladle. For the size crepes I'm going to be making today, that fit this pan, a 2-ounce ladle is perfect. And so that's what I've got here. And then I like some sort of flexible spatula. Right? If you don't have a spatula, you can also use a butter knife, and I'll show you how, right? And now with that, when it comes to what we're going to do today, there's some small details that matter and will help you with the process to help it work better and easier for you. And so the first is how to flip the crepe. So if you want to flip the crepe with success, you take your hand, you put your hand out just like this. Okay? And I teach my kids this too when we're cooking. That when you're flipping anything, if you start with the back of your hand up and you try to flip something, because naturally most of the time we try to flip towards the middle of our body. And so if you try to flip with your hand this way, your whole shoulder has to go, and it's very uncomfortable, and then you get your crepe halfway and it causes issues. So there we go. So if you start with your palm up and then put whatever you're going to use to flip with underneath, then when you go into flip, all you have to do is pick this up and turn it over. Okay? And so flipping is not trying to like throw it or do anything crazy. It's literally you just come underneath it. We're going to pick it up and we're going to turn your hand over. And that doesn't matter what you're flipping, it works the same. So let's get ready. My pan was just about hot a second ago, but I feel like I wanted to tell you a couple of those small details. And so now the next is getting your pan the right temperature, but also getting the oil ready. And so I like to use a fat that you can cook with at a high temperature. It could be grapeseed oil. It could be clarified butter. There's a lot of different oils and fats that you can use. But you want to use one that cooks at a little bit higher temperature. And so as soon as we see that little puff of smoke, we're going to get this ready to go. Hopefully you're learning something out there, because that's the kind of chef that I am. There's different types of chefs. There's like the foodie chefs, and there's the banquet chefs, but I'm like the teaching chef. So hopefully when you walk away, you've learned some skills that you can use when you're cooking at home, because that's my goal in life. If you sent me an email or a text message and said, hey, Chef Jeff, I learned so much and I can apply that at home, that's what I'm looking for. So that's what I want from you today. So now I have a little puff of smoke from my pan. And with that little puff of smoke, I'm going to add just a little bit of oil, just enough to barely coat the bottom of the pan. And the goal is to get rid of any dry spots that you would see in the pan. There's a couple dry spots right there, and you want to get rid of those. So once my pan is hot, then I'm going to add my fat. I'm going to let my fat get hot. So there's two separate steps. Heat your pan, then heat your fat, okay, and then heat your food. Okay, we do a little dance sometimes. It's heat your pan, heat your fat, heat your food. We do it all the time in classes, and you should do that at home. Heat your pan, heat your fat, heat your food. So say it with me. Go ahead, put your hands in the air and say, heat the pan, heat the fat, heat the food. You sing a little song, heat the pan, heat the fat, heat the food. Here we go, let's cook some crepes. All right, so heat the pan, heat your fat on its own, and then we're gonna take your crepe batter, and I'm gonna do one ladle. I'm gonna pour just a little off because I know this pan well. I've done it many times, and so I'm gonna pour the crepe batter in all at once, and we're gonna do one slow swirl. And your crepe, it's going to start to dry out around the outsides. And what you're looking for it to be dry all the way through. So right now you see some dry on the outside, and it doesn't take very long. I can watch it like it's in slow motion. Everything's starting to dry up. And so once the crepe is completely dry, then I'm going to take my spatula and I'm going to push down and scrape underneath this guy with an underhand grip. I'm going to pick it up. We're going to turn our hand over. Okay, then we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, and once we hit 10, this crepe is done, and I'm going to put it onto the plate. Now here's some cool things I want to show you. So a crepe, it should be beautiful and lacy. It should have a nice little pockets, a little bit of browning. So this is a beautiful, almost perfect crepe. Okay. Now, and so this is where the kind of the rubber meets the road, where the fat hits the pan, and where that matters. We're going to do another one without adding any more fat, and I want you to see the difference in what it looks like. All right. So my pan is still hot. I'm not going to add any new fat this time. Okay. I'm going to do the same exact thing. We're going to take just about a full ladle. I'm going to pour it in all at once, and then go one slow swirl. And if you get a hole, you can, there we go. I'll show you how to patch holes if we get a hole in the next one. And again, the process is the same. So you want to watch your crepe, right? Take a look, and you're looking for all the shiny wet to dry up. And once it dries up, then we're ready to flip it. And so I'm almost there. I have just a little bit left. When you're cooking a crepe, you're going to be constantly adjusting your heat. Sometimes if you let your pan empty for too long, it gets too hot, so you got to turn it down. Sometimes while you're cooking, you turn it up just a little bit. All right, so the whole crepe is dry on top, so I'm going to do the same process. I'm going to come underneath, underhand grip, pick it up, flip it over. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. When I hit 10, I'm going to pull this guy out. Okay. And you can start to see the difference. So you can start to see the difference where this one has a lot of little pockets of browning and looks a little bit more lacy than this one. This one's going to start to get more dull. The less fat you have, the duller it will get. We're going to do one more and see, we'll get probably more of these brown patches, and it just won't be as vibrant of a crepe. So here we go again. All the batter at once. 1 slow swirl. And we'll let that cook. Looking for the dryness. Then after this, I'm going to show you how to troubleshoot some problems that you may have when you do it for the first time. Because that's the thing, I've been doing this a long time, and so far I've had no problems. But life isn't like that sometimes, right? When you start doing something, frustrations can come in if you don't know, like, how do I fix the problems that I'm having, you know? And so that's what we're going to go for. So this is all dry, okay? And then I'm going to come underneath, underhand grip, pick it up, flip it over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. This one is ready. Okay. And now you're going to see the third one. This was our first one. Had a lot more fat, looks a lot prettier. The second one starts to dull a little bit, and the third one, without the fat, you start to get these larger brown patches where it's just not quite as pretty anymore. And so those are that's what starts to happen if you don't add fat in between each crepe. And so I like to add fat in between each crepe. But what happens if you put a bunch of fat in here, you're not paying attention, sitting here talking, right? And you're like, oh man, it's like a swimming pool of grease in here. You don't want that, because if you have a swimming pool of grease, let's just cook one, and I'll show you. So here, if you do too much grease, and it's like a swimming pool in there, it's going to give you a different end result. Already, it's starting to really pan fry. Pan frying is a different cooking process than sautéing, which is what we were doing. But we're still going to look for the same things. We're going to look for it to dry up on the top before we flip it, and it's not going to take much longer for us to get there. Almost. There we are. Moved really easy, so I'm going to come underneath. I'm going to flip it over. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And so this is what happens when you add too much grease to your pan. You're going to end up with less of the lacy look, and it's going to be really greasy to the touch. It'll be a little spongy. See how much shinier that is? So this looks kind of dry and pretty. This is really shiny, and you can see the grease just kind of coming out of it. and so that won't actually taste very good. What happens? So let's go through a couple of problems you might have. The first is if you put too much fat in the pan, well, how can you solve that? Well, if I end up with too much fat in my pan, that's why I keep my little bowl. Definitely you want a metal bowl. You don't want anything that will melt because this will be really hot grease. So I will take and I will pour off my extra fat. Okay? So that's kind of like problem number one. Like, what do I do if I have too much? Well, that's what I do. And you could do that every time. You could pour enough in and then pour some off, and then you'll almost be left with the perfect amount you need. Okay, so that is one way to adjust. Then the second is, what if you put too much batter in the pan? Right? So that's what we're going to do in this next one. We'll put too much batter intentionally in the pan. So you put too much batter, and you see how thick it is. Okay, it's just super thick. Your pancake should be super thin. So by the time it should have a hard time covering the bottom. But all this extra. So if I have all this extra, actually I'll just take the extra, pour it right back in my container. Okay, and then I'll cut it and just get rid of that. And now I'm back to the crepe shape that I want. And these, you can nibble on them if you like, right? It depends on how much it gets done. And now this one, it's already dry on the top. So we're going to come underneath, and I'm going to underhand grip, flip it over. You can count to your 10, okay? And we're going to pull that one out. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now a little tip, you see I make sure it's loose, and if you take your spatula and you put it right underneath the edge, then you can help guide it out of the pan. Okay. So now this next one is what happens if you don't put enough in the pan. So I'm going to do just a little bit more fat. Can you use a Teflon or non-stick pan for this? You sure can. The only thing with a Teflon or a non-stick pan, what happens is the whole thing will probably look kind of like brown. It doesn't give you as much lacy look as a carbon steel pan does. So I have a little extra fat there. Perfect. So now, what if you don't do enough, right, and you start to swirl, right, and it won't cover? If it won't cover, that's fine. You can just patch it. It really won't hurt your crepe to patch it. And then I want to show you also that if you don't have a spatula like this, you can use a knife. Okay, so a knife and 2 fingers, right? And so that's typically how this will work. And so we're going to wait for that to dry up. And they're coming along really nice. All right, so now we're going to take a butter knife. I like a butter knife because it's not going to sharpen and cut my fingers. So I'm going to come underneath again. And I'm just going to put 2 fingers here. It's not that hot. I'm going to put 2 fingers. And I'm going to pinch, flip. Okay? I'll let that one go a little long. It got a little bit too much color on it for me personally, but it's still going to be a good crepe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And you can take your butter knife and you can just bring out the little edge and then turn out your pan. So those are most of the problems that you'll come in contact with when you're making crepes. And so we've got success all the way around, but we learn hopefully a lot of things along the way. So let's take a break for a minute and we'll be right back. Let's finish your crepes. Do you want to just eat one like it is? You should. You can just take a piece and pick one up and just eat. That one's really good. But also, so now we can put some stuffing in it. You can do all kinds of things with crepes. I'll make another video with some different fillings and such. But for today, we're going to focus on something easy you probably have laying around. Like I've got some jam. Most people have some jam laying around. I mean, if you're any sort of foodie, you probably have some Nutella laying around or some peanut butter laying around. And so we have those kind of good things. And so your crepe has 2 sides. You have the pretty side and then you have the dull side. And so for this one, I'm going to do a stuffed crepe with a little bit of Nutella, and you know what? And raspberry. Why not? And so I like to put it closer to the edge of my table. I'm just going to take a butter knife, and I'm only going to do it on half. I'm going to do just a little Nutella on half of my crepe. Just be gentle. And then we're going to take a little bit of raspberry jam. Get back down there. Spread that out a little bit. And then a classic fold. Half. And you take this corner, bring it down 2/3, and take this corner and bring it up. And you're in the classic triangle. Okay. So there is one way to fold a crepe. We're going to take a little powdered sugar and just finish that one off. Thanks for cooking with me today. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you learned something.